Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our weekly virtual plant clinic. My name is Colby Pitts. I am the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program Coordinator for Hernando County. I'm here with Master Gardener Volunteer Bernie. Um, Bernie, how you doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. It's gotten a little warmer and I'm not so cold, so I'm
Oh man,
feeling better.
it's beautiful outside right now. I've been enjoying it, not shivering walking in my car in the morning. Uh, the anything when it gets down below like 50, I'm a Florida boy. This is it's a bit too cold for my blood. Dr. Lester, once again, couldn't be with us today, but I think he'll be back next week. So in the meantime, um, if you have any questions, please make sure to put them in the comments. Bernie and I will do our best to answer them. And that goes if you're watching this recorded, you didn't get to catch us live. The comments are monitored, so if you have a question that comes up during this, just leave a comment, and someone will do their best to get back to you with it with an answer. Veronica, good morning. Thanks for being here. Um, so, Bernie, something I wanted to talk about, something that might not be on the forefront of everybody's mind right now, is the fertilizer ordinance, and why we have a fertilizer ordinance. So, currently, as of today, we are in the middle of our winter fertilizer blackout date. That period goes from December 15th to March 15th. So, a cold weather fertilizer restriction for nitrogen and phosphorus on your turf landscape. So, Bernie, why might it not be a good idea anyway,
Well,
regardless of the rules?
the thing about it is when the plants are dormant, especially grass, if you put fertilizer on, they don't absorb any of it. And of course, the big thing in fertilizer is nitrogen, and nitrogen leaches like mad. That's one that really disappears in a hurry. So, uh, if you fertilize and out of season, uh, the nitrogen ends up going pretty much straight to the water system and grows more algae and grows more mosses and bad things. And you get algae blooms in the water, damages wildlife. So uh, you really need the lawn to be in a position to accept the nutrients before you fertilize. So uh, during the absolute downtime, uh, you can't fertilize, and that's what the ordinance says is that one, you can't fertilize in the winter, and obviously if the plants aren't going to do it, it's kind of silly to fertilize in the winter because all you're doing is pouring money into the ground with no benefit. And then second, and people don't necessarily think about this as much, is that in the summer, in the rainy season, uh, that fertilizer tends to leach at an extremely fast rate. Some of the things are held if you're up north and you have uh, loamy type soil like they have up north, a lot of those nutrients don't move. But here, where we have pretty much nothing but sand, all those nutrients tend to move around. So we don't want you fertilizing at a time when a tremendous amount of that fertilizer is going to end, or it's going to just end up in the water again because it's leached out with the summer rain. So during the rainy season, during the winter season, uh, pretty much not able to fertilize. And the university is doing a tremendous amount of research to determine when the actual optimum times are for fertilizing. And they've done some neat things. They build a big patch of grass on a platform, and they fertilize, and then they collect all the runoff, and they see how much uh, of everything that they put on stayed there. And by measuring how much is in the runoff versus how much you put on, you know what the plants did. So uh, they're getting some really good numbers, and I expect that by the time this is over, there'll be statewide laws limiting uh, when you can fertilize statewide, which, right now it's kind of a hodgepodge set of ordinances throughout the state. But just remember, when it's raining, you really shouldn't fertilize whether
Mhm.
you're allowed to or not. And in the winter, when it's not growing, you really shouldn't fertilize whether you're allowed to or not. That's, common sense in both cases.
Yeah, and Veronica actually asked a very good question here. She's in Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County is going to have a completely different fertilizer ordinance. This is just Hernando County. This only applies to Hernando County, and but that doesn't mean that this information that we're disseminating isn't useful, right? So sure, the rules may not apply the same, but it is important. Like, we have these rules for a reason, and the reasoning for our ordinance is basically we're trying to reduce the amount of the nitrogen load that's in these different bodies of water, and that's how this is tested for. That's how you know that there's too much nitrogen, is that the county, state agencies, like the water management districts, they're testing all these bodies of water for their nitrogen levels. And I'm not sure about other districts, but I know through SwiftMud, you can go on their website and check you can check those water readings. It's publicly available information to see, and you can tell around a lot of different developments, places with a lot of turf grass. You're going to see higher nitrogen levels, and that's kind of the case just about everywhere, regardless of the ordinances and such. Veronica says, by the way, I am Alessandra, so my apologies, Alessandra. And she says, "Hello, Bernie."
Why, hello, Alessandria. Uh, if you think about this ordinance and what is the best way to do things and follow the ordinance, actually the thing that is the best for the plants follows the ordinance very well.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, use the slow release nitrogen fertilizer on your lawn. Do it in the spring, in that little period when you're allowed to fertilize. Use granular fertilizer and apply. 50% of the nitrogen should be slow release. And good lawn fertilizers, granular fertilizers, are made that way now. And that gives the plant nitrogen for several months to carry it through. People like the idea of having the little man come out and charge them a bunch of money because they love spending money, and spray nitrogen every month, and the little truck comes by and your lawn gets into the summer and it's starting to look a little yellowish, not quite as green as it was, and you spray some nitrogen on it, and boom, it just goes wild and it turns green and it grows, and you got to mow it twice as often, and it costs you twice as much to have it fertilized every 90 days or every 60 days or every week or every month, as often as they can possibly sell you on getting it fertilized. Doesn't do the plants any good at all. The trick is you use the slow release nitrogen, and then when you get to the point where it is starting to lose color, it's still happy. The lawn isn't in bad shape. The trick is put down some ironite or one of the iron compounds, and it turns green again. And you haven't kicked the lawn up into grow mode. You're not mowing it twice as often, so it's just a lot better for the plant. So
Sure. And it's important to realize previously, before this ordinance, I might not be exactly correct because I didn't work here then, but commercial applicators in Hernando County, I want to preface this as just Hernando County, they were exempt. So a commercial applicator could put down, so you paid the little truck, like Bernie was saying, to come by and put nitrogen down. They could do that. But now in Hernando County anyway, they no longer can put down nitrogen either. It's happened a couple of times where I've been, out. We talk about the fertilizer ordinances. I want to say, well, then what is he doing? Because he's, the trucks are coming. They're coming every month because you're paying them every month to come during that time. So it's important to kind of know, maybe pay attention to what they're putting on your lawn, just so just to make sure you're within you're compliant with code, but also just to know like, hey, they put this down at this time. So if you ever have any issues, it's much easier to diagnose.
You're paying the bill on those things. You have a right to know what they're doing every time, and you should know. And the responsibility for taking care of your lawn rests with you, not with these lawn care companies. So, uh, you know, if they're doing the wrong thing and you're letting them do the wrong thing, that's bad. And you know, if you got St. Augustine lawn and you're not mowing at 4 inches, if you're mowing at 2 inches, you're damaging the lawn. And if you're paying somebody to cut it at 2 inches, you're
They're going to cut
actually
it at
paying
2 inches.
somebody to destroy your lawn.
Yeah, and they're gonna do what you pay them to do, what you ask them for. So that's
and if
why
they over fertilize it,
yeah.
you're going to end up that's one of the things that helps promote take all root rot, which is a serious problem in our county anyway. And you can't avoid everything. You're going to get some gray leaf spot, and somebody needs to know what gray leaf spot looks like, and if you've got it, they need to know what the treatment is and to do it.
Mm-hmm. And if you're unable, if you're unable to do these things yourself, there's no problem with that. But you have to know what to ask for, and that's kind of where the knowledge base comes in of being like, hey, well, I know that I have take all root rot, so I know that paying someone to mow my lawn really short is not helping, or I know that fertilizer is not going to fix this big old brown spot that I have right in the middle of my yard.
Actually, makes it worse.
Yeah. So knowing those things, getting that information base is super helpful when it comes to being able to pay someone to do what's correct instead of paying them to do something that might like actively cause harm. One other thing I'd like to touch on with the fertilizer on this before we move on is those dates again. So like I said, we are in that winter period now, but there's also a period in the summer, and that goes back to the rains. Like you said, don't fertilize when it's raining. June 1st to September 30th in Florida. It's wet and it rains and rains and rains and then rains some more. And then when you think it's done raining, it's going to rain tomorrow too. So that's just why we have it. And like you said, the slow release nitrogen, that's actually that poster I put up is kind of just the things that were changed. There are slow release fertilizer requirements in every fertilizer ordinance, just about. Most of that granular fertilizer you're going to buy is slow release. That's just how it's manufactured. Then, because the only stuff that's not really slow release you can get is the liquid. Yeah.
No, that's not true. Like you can buy ammonium nitrate or ammonium sulfate. Yeah. Those are fast releases, but the slow release is treated sulfur coated urea, those kind of things. Those are the slow releases, and there's a plant fertilizer, Osmocote, that is in little round things. It's kind of neat, and I think it's funny because after those things are empty, they're still laying a lot. People use them on flowers a lot, and if you look in the pot and here's this little thing, and everybody thinks it's an egg of something. Oh my God!
They look like little beads.
Is this egg? So.
Cindy says in Pinellas County that they have a very strict fertilizer ordinance, which is true. But their fertilizer ordinance actually like bans the sale, so they can't. They take it off the shelves. We don't have that luxury here. Luxury to some people, I suppose, but other people may feel differently, and it's not banned for sale. You can still go and buy it. I personally, it's actually my plan for this afternoon is to update all the signs in these retailers. The retailers have to display those signs. So that poster I showed gets printed out and taken to all the retailers in unincorporated Hernando County and left there that it has to be posted. So it can't be banned for sale, but this has to be posted so people know. However, I run into a lot of times that people either have no idea that we even have a fertilizer ordinance or haven't seen the updated one, I think it's super common. So that's kind of why I wanted to touch on it.
Well, one of the things that happens that I see where I'm face to face with the general public is the fellow that says, look, I've lived here almost all my life. I'm a 40-year resident. We never had this problem. Why are we doing this now? Well, I'm a 35-year resident of Florida. When I moved here, we had 9 million people, and I think it's 26 million now, some ridiculous increase in population. So when you have 3 or 4 times the population in just a short period of time, all these things that weren't a problem before become a major problem. All the waterways were pristine 35 years ago. Almost all the waterways now and that are near communities have got algae problems. We went through and cleared all the algae out of the Wiki Watchy because it got so bad. Those things are not good for anybody. And because the population density has increased so much, you actually owe it to your neighbors to take a little more care than what you used to. So, everybody wants to water. Well, 9 million people watering 2 or 3 times a week use a little bit more water, but they don't use as much as 20 million people watering every day, which is, a lot of people say, the heck with it. My lawn doesn't look good unless it gets water, and they're not going to stop me. Well, yes, we are. It's reached a point where we either have to stop people coming here or we have to start taking care of the things that we've got. And I think since we can't stop them from coming here, we're going to have to start taking care of it. And it is just something that everybody is going to have to learn to do. I don't want to do it, but it has to be done. And
I'm sure anyone.
It's going to just destroy everything for everybody. So
Yeah.
if you want these beautiful golf courses, the golf course is an environmental nightmare in the sense that it takes a lot of resources. So if you're going to use those resources, you've got to make up for it by not using resources someplace else. And if you want any of these things, if you want a beautiful lawn, you have to take care of it. You have to learn to do the things that lawn needs yourself, because we no longer have the luxury of, we can throw anything we want at it. Instead of a million square feet of lawn in a particular area, now you've got 4 million square feet of lawn, and builders with their trucks moving in to put in another 2 or 3 million square feet of lawn. So, we're going to have to get on the ball. And I'm not an environmentalist. I'm one of those people that I kind of like the idea of if you got it there and you can turn it on and use it, I'd like to be able to do that. But I'm after being a bad guy for so many years, I've come to the realization there's some things that just have to be. And I'm willing to do my part, and hopefully everybody else will. And I'm sorry about being on a soapbox. It's just
It's okay.
Get on tangents.
Is that not what the plant clinic is? It's just a soapbox for us to get up here and just yap about whatever we feel strongly about. I think that it's important to remember, pretty much all these people making these rules wish, I think, and myself included, I wish that we had the water resources that everybody could just water all the time, and it wouldn't, but we don't. That's the reality. So that's why we have things like watering day restrictions and the like. It's because we just don't have the resources to go willy-nilly, maybe for a very short time, but then you'll very quickly notice things not going okay, things going poorly. Also, a quick note on the golf courses. Yes, ecological nightmares. You have to remember that the golf courses are under completely different rules and regulations when it comes to fertilizer, watering, and such, I get a lot of calls about, well, the golf course is watering at this time, and I'm like, man, that is just a completely different animal that I have absolutely no control, knowledge, etc. on exactly how that goes. So, just kind of putting that out there.
I just think it's amazing. You take a golf course green, they mow it, I don't know what, half inch.
Even
Some
short.
of the Bermudas are mowable at 3/8 of an inch. That is a little tiny infinitesimal piece of grass, and it's got a great root structure and everything, but it's got somebody every night that checks its little health, and they water it every night, and they fertilize it at just the correct times, and they overdress it every once in a while with a little compost type material, and they just really take care of it. You know, if people would take care of their lawns like that, we'd have the most beautiful lawns in the whole world. But we would have people that would really be tired of doing that.
Yeah, it's I won't say where, but I'm a golfer. I played recently somewhere that they, everyone is kind of feeling it when it comes to the watering, the rules that come with that. And I saw a place that completely just kind of almost they let the fairways go, not mowing them, keeping them too high, but then they focused all their attention on keeping the greens green and nice. And I just thought it was really interesting. It's like, well, that's a good allocation of your resources, because who cares if the fairway's brown, the green's green, right? But that's here nor there. Once again, I'd like to I'll apologize for both of us for getting on our soapbox there. Like Bernie said, if you have any questions about your own landscape instead of what we're on about, please feel free to put them in the comments. Once again, these are recorded, so if you're watching this recorded, feel free to put those in the comments. Someone will get back to you.
One of the things that happens, it's kind of unique with humans, is we tend to go for monocultures, and everybody seems to want to be the same. So, everybody has to have the same lawn. And I look back 30 years ago, the landscape plants that we used are totally different than what we're using now. And there's a season for all these plants apparently that red tip potenia was one that back 35 years ago, red tips, everybody had red tip shrubbery. And the problem was, because it was a monoculture, there was so much of it, it developed a disease, and the disease pretty well wiped it out, and they move on to the next one. And now everybody uses viburnums, and viburnums are starting to develop quite a few problems, and it's just happened with so many plants. We had the Asian cycad scale problem with the sagos, and if we had a little more mix, we'd have fewer problems. So it almost makes me think that the correct approach to doing these things is don't do what your neighbor did. So rugged individualism. And if you do something different from your neighbor and they start to give you a hard time, say, Bernie told me to do it. And don't tell them where they can find Bernie, because I don't want to have to deal with them either.
Yeah, I mean, the monoculture issue. It is you don't find like natural monocultures almost anywhere in nature. Most of the time, it's some kind of either human interference, whether that be development, other kind of like logging or something. That's where you find monocultures, invasive species, and things like that. But monocultures don't really exist in nature, so it is kind of interesting that people try so hard to have monocultures. That's what a lawn really is most of the time. It's just a monoculture. Maybe think about doing something a little bit different. if you can. I know a lot of places you have rules where you can't do that. You must have, even down to the species of grass. I know St. Augustine's a pretty common requirement in a lot of HOAs. But having and it doesn't even have to be something like a freedom lawn or what have you. You can, if you break it up with enough bedding and things like that, you can have just a small amount of turf grass. And reducing the amount of turf grass you have not only reduces the amount of effort it takes to take care of it, but it also reduces your fertilizer input, the water input, things like that are important that we're trying to reduce the use of everywhere we can.
Just introduce a little area with some natives. I'm one of the first people to admit that going all native really isn't very attractive unless you happen to be a nature lover and you really like that particular look. But it does tend to be a little messy. But if you do it in a small amount, you can make it look really neat and eliminate some of the monoculture effect and still have something that you can be proud of. And I think that's what most people want. The whole thing on the lawns goes back to the 50s when they had the big, if you can't have a great lawn, you're not much of a man. And guys went out and they bought a mower and a roller and an aerator and some hose and a hoe and a little garden cart and a wheelbarrow and some fertilizer and some grass seed and a spreader and everything that you could think of. And these guys that are pushing it, the whole thing is you're not a man if you can't have a better lawn than Joe next door. Joe's better than you are if you don't have a good lawn. And it works.
And the funny thing is, Joe next door might have a microclimate, or he might have some kind of different soil chemistry that just makes it easier for him.
Actually, Joe next door was competing with you because his wife was saying, "Bill over there, he's doing a lot of lawn work and you aren't." So it was kind of a funny time, but people forget those things. I had a lady in this morning and she's in her 70s, and she remembers the time when she was a kid, the clovers and the dandelions and things and the lawn. She said, but we had some grass. I said, yeah, but it wasn't a monoculture grass. It was whatever happened to grow there. So that's kind of neat. I remember blowing the little things off the dandelion. So, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers do, but there's a lot of people that have never seen that kind of lawn. The old 1940s American lawn disappeared in the 50s, and if you weren't there, you don't know about it. So,
most of my life, I lived in a place where it's like, well, you get whatever comes in from the pasture.
Yeah.
So I had pasture grass, and it was kind of whatever. You mow it every couple of weeks, but I also lived in the sticks, so it was. I mean, even for me moving from, I moved from Webster to Orlando for college, and there's no lawns where I live, absolutely none. I lived in an apartment, and then moving here, and then back to Webster, and then here is even so much different.
Do a little soil test on a lawn and find out if you've got an oak tree. Oak leaves have been falling, tannic acid, and the oak leaves kind of over a long period of time tends to. We don't have them, unfortunately. Anyway, it tends to acidify the soil, and it makes a great location for a place to plant some azaleas.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could just get a few azaleas and maybe some gardenias or some camellias or some of those things, a little flowering, put a little color in the lawns. It doesn't have to all be a tree on each side of the walkway. And that's about it. Do a little creative planning, and
Yeah,
There's
I mean,
some really nice plants that grow here and give you some color, and you could have color at different times of the year, and it's landscaping is a really fun thing to do if you're young enough that you can get out and still do it. I'm getting to the point where if I get down, I have to have somebody get me back up. But I would really like to see a lot more flowering shrubs put in place.
mhm,
Little dwarf azaleas they've got now are just a gorgeous plant.
mhm,
Unfortunately, they still are not real happy in the high pH areas. But if you got some low pH areas or some pine trees, a little clump of pine trees and some little baby azaleas in the area, makes it look kind of neat. So
yeah. You talked about the going all native. It might not be the most aesthetically pleasing thing. I got into it with not got into it, but we had a discussion where I was wrong about what we're talking about landscape and plants and what we're going to do at the front of the house. I wanted to just put muley grass out front in the garden in the bed. When she was like, well, first I had to show her exactly what that was, and after we've seen muley grass live in Florida. After I showed her, she's like, really? I was like, I like it. I think it looks nice.
well, it makes a good little border grass around or something. So if you put a little island, some muley grass, that's kind of a neat plant. I like it. I
I,
agree with
I
you.
I love muley grass. I think it's one of my favorites. But I was talking like up against the house in the flower bed.
No,
Yeah, I figured most people were going to be more aligned with what she was thinking. In my head it was like low
I
effort,
hate
no
hate
water.
to say it, but women are aesthetically a little smarter than we are usually. So
I also think she cares more about it. So I might just concede. Um, but Sam has a question. Uh, how to know that the cold weather was what killed their plant that grew in a container?
what kind of a plant was it, Besson?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you
That
know,
might
a lot of times, if the it wasn't really real cold, if it was just frost, you can kill the plant and the roots are okay. Potted plants, container plants, tend to have the containers cool down and damage the roots. But a high percentage of these plants that get killed to the ground do grow back if the roots haven't gotten killed. And we haven't really had one of those killer freezes. We've had, I don't know where he is, Cuban oregano. I'd say put the pot in the sun and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to remember too. I think this might have been where you were going. Uh, the when a plant's in a pot, it's not getting the benefit of the same benefit. I'm sure there's a very small one of that radiant heat that's coming out from the earth. You have to think that if a plant's planted in the ground, it's like it's got all the soil around it, and you only have a few cubic feet of soil that's retaining that heat during the day. And on top of that, those plants are not getting the same acclimation to temperature change in a pot in a container that plants planted in the ground are going to get. So if you have potted plants and it's cold, it's like if especially if they're cold sensitive, it's really important that you get them inside. It's kind of the benefit, I think, the main benefit of planting them, planting those cold sensitive plants in containers. Um, Michelle has another question about their cold about the cold stuff. So she says, so many of my plants got burned in that one cold night. Robellini palm, Bismarck palm, plumeria, croton, etc. It seems like they're still getting worse. When will I know if they'll recover?
Most of those plants are going to recover without a problem. The Robellini will recover. The Bismarck palm will recover. The plumeria, that's probably going to recover. Uh, Plumeria is kind of a awkward plant. If the stem stays hard, it doesn't get soft and mushy. It'll recover. Crotons probably are okay. Uh, The reason they're getting worse is that the parts of the plants that were damaged from the cold are going to die and fall off the plant. But the basic plant is going to reproduce those parts and go on. So when will you know if they'll recover? You won't know until April or May.
Mm-hmm.
No,
It's
and that's why we tell people don't be in a hurry to cut the plants back. If you go in on all those plants and you start cutting them back and they are alive, you'll put them in grow mode. That wounding of the plant tends to cause the plant to come out of hibernation and go into grow mode. If we have another frost, those plants are weakened. They do not survive the second frost as well as they did the first one. So leave them alone. The bad parts of the plant that will eventually need to be removed later will tend to provide some insulation to the plant. A quick explanation of what happens is heat moves in two ways. You can heat something up and move that something, and it's that something is warm and that something radiates its heat and tends to heat things up. So people tend to think of air temperature as bringing the heat. Well, the heat actually came from radiant heat from something. So your plant's sitting there in the open air, and it's looking at a sky that is no clouds. And out in space, the temperature is minus 400 degrees or some ridiculously low temperature. And sitting on the ground, this plant at 40 degrees, well, let's say 38 degrees, is so much warmer than the sky. It radiates its heat off into the sky, trying to get to outer space. And that heat that's radiated, once it goes away, the plant temperature is falling like a brick then. And the plant gets colder and colder and colder. The air temperature is not radiating its heat. It doesn't have much mass to give up, but it's at 38 degrees. The air temperature stays at 38 degrees. The ground and the plants associated with being on the ground continue to lose heat by radiation off into space. So they drop down, they go to 30 degrees, frost forms. The frost tends to rupture the cell walls in a lot of these plants. Once the cell walls are ruptured, that part of the plant will never come back. It just doesn't have the physical capability. So the plants that get nailed at night and have this frost problem generally are plants that are not ever grown where it's going to have frost. So you're planting things that you're actually too far north for what that plant is. The plants that grow farther up north produce a little antifreeze. It starts getting cold. They instead of turning out sugars to make the plant grow, they turn out a little glycol to act like an antifreeze, and they take a colder temperature. Now, the roots are sitting there in the ground, and if all you have is one of those air temperature drop down to 34 degrees or whatever, the ground temperature never goes below 34 degrees. Actually, the ground temperature probably stays 45, 50, maybe as much as 55 or 60 degrees. So the roots are protected, the plant dies. If the plant is a woody plant, you don't touch it. You leave it alone, you wait until sometime in March or April, the plant goes into its normal growth cycle. Now you can see where the dead parts of the plant are, the things that really need to be trimmed, and you can trim them without doing any damage to the plant. If it's a herbaceous plant and it fell over and it's laying on the ground, all the pieces the cells are all ruptured and it's obviously dead. you might as well clean it up because that part is never going to grow again.
Mhm.
But if it's one of the herbaceous plants that says, oh, what the heck, I can survive this a little bit, I'll put a little bit of antifreeze in my stems and keep the stems going and protect the growing mode plus nodes, then you have a few leaves that show damage, and those leaves don't turn black and fall off right away. They slowly die off. There was enough antifreeze produced in the plant that it wasn't a catastrophic thing. It's going to kick those off eventually and keep going. So those plants, if they're still vertical and they look like the plant should look, and it's not this looks like Jello type thing, leave them alone. Don't worry about it. And I tell you that, and I'm one of the worst offenders of that there is. I go out and I look at them and I say, God, that looks bad. I've got to do it, and I try and try and try, and after about 2 weeks, I give up and I prune them early. So if you do, I understand, but you shouldn't. So did I explain that right? Do you understand it all?
I think you got it. I think when we went over, a few weeks ago, I gave a couple classes on that cold weather landscape protection. Patience is the biggest virtue when it comes to that, because of course, there's going to be times you look at that and like, man, that thing is dead as a doornail. Like, it's done. But other times, there might be a little, is it not? I'm not sure. And the only way that you'll know is by, letting it ride out. Protect it the best you can. But, like Bernie said, you don't want to prune it. You just kind of want to leave it alone. Because a lot of times, like, you'll see a leaf that maybe has a little bit of damage. And if you immediately prune it off, one, that leaf wasn't all the way dead yet, still some function there. So you're taking that away. And then you're like, the plant's going to grow this new juvenile material that is so much more likely to be affected by that cold weather. So, patience is the biggest virtue when you're dealing with any of that, any freeze damage, cold damage to any of your plants. It's kind of an important thing to pay attention to.
A real good example of a plant that every season, every winter, is going to get Nels firebush. They get hit, and you cut it back to the ground, and once it starts growing, it takes it about 2 months, and it's a big full bush again. You can almost see them grow. So, but the thing to remember is, if it did it this year, it's probably going to do it next year, and it's going to do it the year after that. And if those things really bother you, those are not good plants to be using. And I went through and I had a lot of plants that were a problem. I dug them up and I put them in pots, and I put them in the garage when we were going to have frosts or freezes. And then I got to thinking about it. Why am I doing this? I don't really care about those plants as much as I thought I did. The fact that I'm moving them in and out, and some of them took some pretty good sized pots. That meant that I had to get a cart and wheel them around on a cart. So if you lose plants, it's a good time to think about, is this really what I want in this particular location? And if I put it in a pot, do I really feel strongly enough about this plant that I'm willing to move it around and do what it needs? And the answer on a lot of them was no, but I have 3 big plants that I now really like, and I move them in and out. Plumeria is one of them. And I've got some little plants that I'll put in the ground that I don't mind moving them around. One thing I did find is that if you leave the plant in the pot and put it in the location you're going to put it, and find out if it's happy with that amount of sun and whatever, it gives you a good idea of whether you can put it permanently in that spot or not. And that works pretty well. I have found some plants that maybe I've had to move them to a different location in the yard to make them happy. So it's easier to, if they're still in the pot, than it is to dig them up. But if you plant one of your plants and it does not doing well, there's absolutely nothing to stop you from digging it up and put it someplace else and see if it'll do better. The difference between the amateur and the master gardener is the size of the compost pile.
Yeah. Well, Bernie, I think you got it. You're on one today. So I think we'll go ahead and start wrapping us up here. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. We got a few more minutes here. Some things that we can talk about. I'll go ahead and put our contact information. Like I said last week, any really tough, really time-intensive, difficult questions, that's the guy you want to talk to. Send it to Dr. Lester. That's the best way to reach him by email. Any of your plant pathology questions. He really likes pictures. We all like pictures. So if you're asking a plant question, whether that's in person or on email, send a picture. Better yet, if you're in person, bring in a sample. That's going to help the folks over at the extension office or me if I'm helping you. That's going to help us figure out. It's going to give us a lot more information than just the description that you can give us. And sometimes the description's enough, but really, if you want to know for sure, picture. What do they say? A picture's worth 1,000 words. If you want to talk to Bernie or anyone else at Extension, that's going to be the phone number. Bernie, you're there on Thursdays most of the day, yeah? Mm-hmm. So Thursday is the day if you want to call and talk to Bernie. Any of the Extension events, things like these classes, all that stuff can be found right here. Something I do want to touch on, we have a rain barrel workshop coming up on Saturday, February the 8th. If you are someone who has trouble getting to our weekday morning events, which is normally when they are, this is a really good opportunity to get yourself a rain barrel and a compost bin. And that class is taking place at the Master Gardener Nursery. Like I said, Saturday, February 8th. I'm trying to think of, so Saturday, February 8th. To sign up, I'll put my contact information up in a second. You're going to want to get with me about that. I actually got a couple sign-up emails just while we were sitting here. So it's going to be exciting. I think, like I said, a really great opportunity to get a rain barrel or compost bin if you can't make it to those weekday classes. The Master Gardener Nursery is open Wednesdays and Saturdays from it's 9 to 12, right, Bernie? Mm-hmm. So 9 to 12. Oh, go ahead.
I would like to also point out that along with the plant things, and I realize this is a plant clinic, but the extension does other things. Right now, we have a class for first-time home buyers going on and over in the classroom, and we do 4-H. We have a water marine specialist on the staff. We have farm people on the staff, so livestock people. So we can provide a lot of services, mm-hmm. And it's all free. Mm-hmm. It's for the most part. Anything we can do to help you, we will. So if you've got some young people in the family that you think might be interested at all, 4-H is a great program, and that's pretty much the whole country, all the extensions.
Oh yeah.
Colby's group, the water people, they're a group that really want to help people, and it's not just a case of pay your water bill. It's a case of not only do we do the other things, but things like the rain sensor for your irrigation system. Mm-hmm. They pay part of the bill. If your rain sensor isn't working, you can get a credit on your water bill for getting a new rain sensor. So
Mhm.
there are things that are not immediately apparent that you can get help with, and the amazing thing is it's free. Actually, it isn't really. You've paid it in your taxes. You've
Mhm.
already paid for the service. If you don't use it, it's your fault. So,
Yeah, dude, man, the extension has such a wide reach of different things that they do. Pretty much anything at the house really is just about how it goes. I mean, you guys have you guys do like financial classes and everything else there too, right? Things of that nature,
yeah,
um, all offered through extension. So it's a really great resource if you haven't checked with
some
our
some
extension here in Hernando
extension
County.
some extension offices do home ec. We don't do home ec here, but it's it depends on where you are. So they contact your local extension, find out what they can do for you, what they can't do for you, and then when they have an opportunity to help you and you need it and you can use it, by all means contact them. And if you have never contacted an extension office or utilities office, uh, you probably wasted some money that they could have saved you or could have helped you with, and you know, it, in perilous times like these, all the help you can get should be appreciated. So I hope that we get an opportunity to serve. That's what we're here for.
Yep.
With that, you can go back to your shutting it down.
Let me go through our comments here real quick. Bassem asks, "Is there any update on the citrus screening?" I imagine he's asking about the research.
Um, they actually have some plants that appear to be resistant enough to produce. Um, there, this is a long-term thing in that uh, the plants have to be grown up through the time that they're producing to tell what's going on. So
Mhm.
um, basically, with the research they're doing now, they're 2 years into what will be a 4 or 5 year program. So yes, there it looks like it's really good. Uh, the the sad part about it is it's probably going to be 2 or 3 years before anything gets released to be in the market.
Mhm.
You know, the citrus in Florida is in terrible shape right now. The citrus acreage is half what it was at its peak. 30 years, the acreage has gone to half, and
And it's not going up.
the production is less than 10%. That acreage that disappeared, for the most part, is now producing to people. So,
Hmm. Yep. Um, oh, very Alessandra says, "I have good news on citrus screening. That's you'll hear that a lot." UFIFIS from Gainesville has provided Tamarixia bugs, which they are parasiting the citrus screening bugs. So good in my garden. So far, good in my garden. Well, that's interesting. I haven't heard anything about that. I'll have to do some reading. Um, and then Anne also says that they think they may have some answers. And she saw an article about it. Yeah, well, that's the thing about those, especially research universities. It's like a constant. Like there's people that's their job is to go and try to figure this stuff out, and they're doing it. Just about 365 days a year, somebody's doing something uh, to solve those types of issues. Going through our comments here, Nancy asks, "What time is the class?" The compost bin portion, which comes first, starts at 10, and it normally lasts. It normally lasts till around 12, maybe more, maybe less. Most of the time, less. So if you're interested in that, like I said, I'll get to the rest of the that stuff. And Alessandra said she's been releasing these for the past 3 years, which is I said I haven't heard. Have you heard much about those Tamarixia bugs?
no,
It's,
the psyllids are going to be tough to eliminate. And the scary thing is that the psyllids are actually in the rest of the areas that are citrus producers in the U.S. So if the bacteria goes to Texas or California, it's all in place to be a disaster. So that is a wonderful thing. If they can get rid of the psyllids and stop the reproduction, that would be a big help. But, at this point, any place there's citrus, there is citrus greening. I had the fellow this morning that was asking, but he had 4 different kinds of trees in there, all infected. So
it's super common. I mean, it's like it's almost like at this point just a given. It's not if, but when. So moving on here, kind of wrapping us up. If you want to sign up for rain barrel compost bin classes or anything Florida friendly landscaping here in Hernando County, you can go ahead and shoot me an email. You can find out more information about any of that stuff that I've talked about there at my link tree. And one of the things I wanted to touch on the link tree that Bernie so gratefully let me remember, because I almost forgot, was our rebate programs. We currently are running 3 that are separate from everything else. That's going to be our rain sensor rebate program, our high efficiency washer rebate program, and our low flow toilet rebate program. So there's requirements for all those. I'm not going to get into all of them. But if you're thinking about replacing a toilet, or your rain sensor isn't functioning, or you need a new washer, please check out this website before you do it. It can definitely save you some money. You can find all that information there at my link tree. There's a button on there that says HCUD rebates. And remember that those are only available to Hernando County Utilities Department customers. We cannot give you a rebate if you're not paying us a water bill. Kind of how that works. So we'll go through and everybody's saying thank you. And Nancy, Bassem, and Michelle, and thank you all for coming. I know we say it every week, but if you guys didn't come and watch and ask us questions, I know I would have gotten bored of doing this by now. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap us up. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for being there. Seb?